Good afternoon, innovators. David Wright here, and I am your host of the Disruptive Innovators Champions of Digital Business podcast. And this afternoon, I am lucky enough to be joined by Mr. Daniel Burrus. Daniel, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah, I know it's been a long time in the making. So, Daniel, for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with you or your body of work, I imagine a lot are, but could you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and kind of your current, maybe not role, but your current kind of function in our community, if you will?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a very brief kind of a thing. So, I'm really a researcher at heart. Actually, I directed a federal research grant as an undergraduate in college. And I ended up teaching biology and physics for a number of years. And so, let me just say, I'm really a teacher. That's why I was put on the planet. That's what I hope to do during this podcast is to teach, not just tell. But coming back to, I taught for a number of years. I had an idea for an airplane design, so I built one, test flew it. Turned out I had 37 national locations in the first year. Oh, it literally took off. Had an idea for another company, another one, and within 3 years, I had 4 different companies. All of them were doing extremely well. Actually, out of the 6 companies I've started, 5 were profitable in the first year, and 4 were national leaders in the first year. So, and they were all very disruptive. However, I missed the teaching part. So I sold all but the main one that I've had the longest, and that's Burrus Research. And what we do is research global innovations in all areas of technology, lasers, robots, genetics, fiber optics, you name it. And I started that many decades ago. And that's when I started writing. I've written 6 books that thankfully have been New York Times, Wall Street Journal bestsellers. I've given over 3,000 keynote speeches around the world in over 50 countries. I do strategic advising. I'm on the Department of Defense Joint Services Futures Group. I'm an advisor on AI to the military, to Google, to IBM, and others. So there's advising. I have a learning system that I developed, the anticipatory organization learning system. But most importantly, and this can kind of key us into some areas here, is I developed a model for accurately predicting the future of technological change and its impact on business. So somewhere in our interview, I want to empower everyone out there with giving them how they can do it, because I don't want to be the only guy that can do that.
Yeah, no, I was reading about that the anticipatory business model, so really excited to offer that to our listeners. Um, and yeah, obviously a pleasure to have you on. I think people will really benefit from your experience, Daniel. It actually reminds me, like when you mentioned like everything that you did in starting those businesses, like in my kind of the way I'd categorize it as kind of the striver and then moving to the teacher kind of model. It reminds me of Arthur Brooks's book, From Strength to Strength. So anyone who hasn't checked that book out, Arthur Brooks, kind of really how becoming a teacher and kind of an advisor and that whole kind of come from with someone with your experience is super fulfilling. And that's my experience of you, Daniel, is that you seem very fulfilled. So you're just a testament to his work as well. But anyway, I digress. Daniel, we like to just start every episode off with one piece of actionable advice you might look to leave everyone with today.
Well, the reason I called my last book the anticipatory organization rather than the reactionary organization is we all are focused on being agile. And agility came from sports. It's reacting as quickly as you can to a disruption after it disrupts, reacting as quickly as you can to a problem after it occurs. And that's good. But in a world where AI and other technologies are driving us to beyond exponential technology driven change, just reacting quickly is not quite good enough. So the anticipatory model is showing you how to anticipate disruptions before they disrupt, turning disruption into a choice, allowing you to be what I would call a positive disruptor. uh, being able to anticipate problems before they occur, so you can pre-solve them and move forward faster. So that whole drive for me and what I'm here for and what I'm trying to do is to get as many people on planet Earth being anticipatory and less reactionary. Because I think if we don't, I don't know if we're going to be happy campers on planet Earth as the future unwinds.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, there's a lot of wins, a lot of things that are happening, environmentally, from a healthcare standpoint, financially, that are going to demand thinking differently, and sooner rather than later. These aren't things that are
Yeah,
50 years off. It's like happening right now. I don't feel like everybody realizes it. So I'm glad you're out here kind of educating everyone on this. And it makes me feel good because I know that like part of our methodology is moving towards predictive analytics and kind of how we can be more anticipatory. So I'm looking forward to learning more as well. Daniel, I wanna dive into kind of that business model and all of that. But before we do, I just want to learn a little bit more about yourself. I mean, obviously, serial entrepreneur. You have this research company that you've had for a number of years. Um, what would you say is one of the most important things that you learned along your journey? And if you, and this is personally, professionally, or otherwise, and if you could think about what life was like before learning it and after learning it, I think the listeners would benefit from whatever that might be.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I learned is to think big and then realize you just thought small. There's a bigger big. So in the past, I was thinking big and then I'd get busy doing the big thing and it would be successful. But in hindsight, gee, I wish I would have. But again, you can't change the past. You can only change the future based on what you do in the present. So what I learned is think big, come up with your plan, and then stop and say, wait, wait, wait. Now, what's the bigger big? And you'll start seeing things that were invisible to you before because you have to get to a certain level to even see that bigger big. So that's number one. A couple of others, I'll put it in there. When I left teaching and started my first business, I knew I had never had a business course. So that was a downside. So there were two things that really helped me and have stayed helping me throughout my career. One is I decided not to compete because I didn't know how to compete. Hey, I was in education, I was teaching biology and physics. So I knew I would lose if I did what they were doing. So I learned look at what others were doing and not do that. Like, look at all the things they weren't doing and do that. That's number one. Don't compete. I gave you a quick version of that. And number two is I had to learn how to fail fast. First of all, I couldn't afford to fail slow. Hey, I was starting a company for the first time. But secondly, by failing fast, I learned how to learn faster. And we have success metrics. But what I did was I also put together failure metrics so I know which way I'm heading. A lot of times we get deep into failure before we realize, hey, we got to stop doing this. This isn't working. Instead of which way are you going? And so anyway, those are several things that have really helped. Don't compete, fail fast, and don't just do the big, do the bigger big. And by the way, to make this work for those of us that are chief CFOs, CIOs, or whatever, you're inside another organization. This is for you. This is for your career. I want you to be anticipatory regarding your career, not just reactionary. I want you to realize that you are far more than you think you are. You've got more inside of you than you think. So do the bigger big for you as well.
Mm. Yeah, I'm so glad I asked you that because I'll often find myself telling our clients, think big, start small, right? In that, like, hey, we don't want to just look at this point solution or this platform. We need to take that wider look and then kind of And then we could start here if it makes sense for everything else, but like let's not lose sight of everything else. But I haven't thought bigger. I
Well,
haven't.
yeah, yeah, let's
So
just go back to everyone that's watching this. I want you to think back to when you got your last degree, whatever that was. All right. Now, when you were getting your last degree, you were thinking big about your future. I know you were. However, now that you're looking back in hindsight, I know every one of you are thinking, I was thinking too small back then.
it's true.
I
It's
was.
true.
I was. I bet you all are. You know what that means? Here's what that means. You're thinking too small right now.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. No, that's so true. Um anyway, that's
No, I
great
got you,
advice.
got you thinking. That's good. That's what
I
I
got the
wanted.
wheels turning. Yeah.
I want to get those wheels turning. Exactly.
So Daniel, clearly you've had a lot of success stories, right? Like you've exited a number of businesses. You got this great research company, 3,000 keynotes. I mean, it's remarkable. Is there a time though that you can remember that you either had a project fail or you had some sort of hardship, again, personally or professionally, but ultimately it was the catalyst for something new or something different, or you took away a profound lesson? Anything you could share with us?
Sure. A couple. One is when I was developing my first airplane and built it and was test flying it. I put a lot of effort into that. It was a unique design. I was using new types of materials. And again, I never had an engineering degree, but I was a science guy. So I put it together and it just didn't have the stability. It failed. It was not, it was, you could fly it, but it wasn't safe. And so, and when you put a lot of effort into something, hey, there were thousands of rivets in that sucker, much less designing it and building it. Um, so, it's like I could just give up, but I had the bigger, big thought and decided to go back and do it again rather than I got to pick something else. And that ended up being a plane that, again, got me into the 37 national locations in the first year. It was a big hit. So that was an example. One other one is back during the last big recession, when right after the smartphone was going, meaning, let's say, the Apple iPhone. So that was the game changer, the iPhone. All of the apps were, 99 cents. You can now make it look like a beer can. And when you do this, it empties. I mean, it was all kid stuff. So I decided what are the business applications and started a company as an experiment because I was writing my book, Flash Foresight, How to See the Invisible and Do the Impossible. So I decided while I was writing the book, why not start a company with a rule: I will not hire anyone and I'll not spend any money, and see how good the book is while I'm writing it. And then using the methodologies I described in the book, I created the first mobile real estate app. And we were the eighth most downloaded app within the first week. I was on, all the big television shows the next week as I was disrupting real estate. But I'm going to get to the failure part. So it was growing. I found a way to monetize it. It was making really a lot of money very quickly. And I was wanted to form a partnership with a company, a big company. And what happened was the CEO did not reveal the difficulties that were having in the background, and they were about to uh, go into crisis mode, and he would be replaced, and so on. So I put a lot of effort into that relationship that actually fell apart once I got the truth, and it was that was a failure. But again, failing fast is part of the key here. And what I learned is to do a little bit more. Remember, I didn't have a business background. Uh, to do a little more research and try to dig deeper to get the backstory of what's going on when you're doing something like that. Because I was going with, I don't know, I grew up with people being kind of honest. So I didn't,
Yeah.
so I now realize, well, it sounds good, but I better check.
Yeah.
And by the way, that app did make a lot of money, and I ended up not wanting to get in the real estate business. I wanted to be in the business I'm in with you today, helping everyone become more anticipatory. So I licensed off that app to to a small company that's today Zillow. So if you want to know how it worked, how that got started, you could go to visionaryapps.com and see pre-Zillow what it looked like.
Wow, it's super cool. I feel like I was actually on
Here were you at the
Zillow
point of Alpha.
earlier today, actually, because we're looking for a new place ourselves. So,
Well, actually, how it
um,
functions is exactly what I developed when I created the first one. It's pretty amazing. Anyway,
that is,
I don't get sidetracked into Zillow. Let's keep giving them good things.
yeah, no, I love it. I mean, it's already been fantastic. So I want to transition now, Daniel, to talk a little bit more about the anticipatory business model. Before I do, I usually at this juncture like to ask about your favorite book or blog, either all time or that you've been reading recently. Obviously, you're an author though too, so I wouldn't mind hearing maybe about like one of your favorite books that you've written. I think that would be good to add to the reading list, which is the point of the question. So maybe you could help us with that.
Sure. Well, I would start with getting my last book, Anticipatory Organization, but it applies to individuals, not just a company. So it give you lots of the methodologies and things that we're teaching, a lot more depth in that. The best all-time book that I ever read will kind of shock you a little bit. It's not what you were expecting. It was The Little Engine That Could.
Mm,
It's a kid's book. And I read that
yeah.
when I was a little kid. And it was, I think I can, I think I can, I know I can, I know I can. And frankly, that philosophy has served me well throughout my entire life. So I would say that probably had the biggest impact. I don't read what most people read, though. I read a lot, but what I read for fun would make most people's eyes glass over. I'm reading about the latest breakthroughs in all areas of technology. So I might be reading about, you know, uh, could be biology, it could be, whatever subject. I'm into see what happens when I read about a new breakthrough or a new innovation is I see how it can be applied. So I go
Mhm.
to application right away. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I read about a new type of paint that absorbs light during the day and then gives off the color of that paint in a glow at night. And I thought, hey, cool. Now, most people would say, cool. And then they go back and get busy. But see, I don't do that. I was thinking, wow, in India, there are a lot of people that are riding these little scooters around. They got the kids on those scooters. They got crummy little lights, and there's a lot of accidents. What if their bikes all glowed? Wow, save a lot of lives. What else could I do? You see where I go.
Yeah.
So I have so much fun with that. I'm reading that kind of thing, and I spend a lot of time writing blogs. I've got a couple million blog readers. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I've got 1.2 million followers because I'm sharing this kind of stuff in those platforms. So I'm so busy with output and that kind of input that I'm not reading a lot of other blogs.
Yeah, no, understandable. But great answer. Feel like I've read that book in the last 6 to 12 months with my daughter. So,
Oh, did you? Oh, how
oh
neat.
yeah, for
Hey,
sure. And
glad you
it's an
did.
old book. I mean, it's probably from like
My God,
the
it's a really old book, but what a killer little lesson in there
it is. It really is.
for you.
So it's funny too how many children's books I apply. I'll find myself telling my team like we can't let the pigeon drive the bus. That's another newer children's book, but I won't get into that right now.
Hey, wait, let me give you one quick idea. Let me give you a quick
Sure.
idea because there's a lot of people that are listening that probably have children. So here's a little thought for you. Um, Ask your child or the kids for a bedtime story. Get your chat GPT going and say, what kind of story would you like? And then start putting it in. What kind of characters would you like? Put in, let them tell you what they want, have it make the story, and then you read it to them.
Ooh, I'm excited. I'm gonna do that. And now with the voice GPT, I could even have the bot speak the story to them.
I'm just giving you a little idea here. Again, I'm
It's a
an
pair.
idea kind of guy.
It's a parent in a box. I could just set it up there and go watch the game. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
I
and of course, we know that would be the absolute opposite because just another little thing for us all to think about. We live in an increasingly technology-driven world. However, we live in a human world. And we got to always remember that, and there's no matter how good all this tech gets, it's the humanness that pulls us together. And it's kind of going beyond just the AI hype and realizing AI is an assistant,
right.
not
Yeah.
necessarily a replacement.
100%. We always talk about how we're leveraging AI to optimize or elevate the human experience, right? Um, so, um, so Daniel, I want to talk more about the anticipatory business model. So we kind of, you know, started to touch on that and like kind of what gave you the inspiration to kind of get into that, but maybe you could just educate us a little bit more on that, and we can kind of go from there.
Absolutely. Again, my research company has been around for over 30 years. So I've been doing this for a long time. And what I realized is there's no shortage of trends. Matter of fact, you can always predict when we'll get a list of new trends right around the beginning of every new year. And the problem is two things. Number one, which ones will happen? And secondly, what's the time frame? Well, I've solved that problem over the decades and came up with a way to do it. So here's the nutshell. I'm going to be the teacher now to show you a little bit of how this works. All trends fit into one of two categories. They're either what I call a hard trend based on a future fact that will happen. Now, the litmus test is it can't be changed. All right. So that means what is that doing? It's giving you certainty in an uncertain world. And when you have certainty, you have the confidence to make a bold move. If you're innovating around a future fact, something that's going to happen anyway, you know what? You got low risk innovation instead of high risk innovation. So what a hard trend does, and I'll give you examples in a minute. What a hard trend does, it lets you see disruptions before they disrupt, turning disruption into a choice. Because today you're either going to be the disruptor or the disrupted. There's no middle. You're either going to be more relevant or less relevant. There is no middle. And I know which direction all of us would like to be heading. It also, hard trends let you see problems before you have them. How many times have you said, well, I knew that would happen? And I would say, then why did you let it? So, and that's because you didn't have the confidence that it actually would happen. But there's a way to
Mm,
and I'll give you some examples in a minute, but let me just tell you about the other kind of trend. The other kind of trend is a soft trend. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's not a future fact. It might happen. And that's a big difference, especially when it comes to driving innovation. Again, strategy based on uncertainty has high risk, strategy based on certainty has low risk and high reward. I love them both. Why do I love them both? And this is the second part of this that I'm teaching you. First part, trends are either hard or soft. And second, a trend by itself is boring, it's academic, who cares? Until you attach an opportunity to it. When you do that, it bursts into actionable life.
mm.
So I love soft trends. Why? If you don't like them, you can change them. Why do I love hard trends? Again, it lets you see disruption and change. So here's some examples of some hard trends. Wireless. You held up your iPhone a few minutes or your whichever one model it was. We went from 3G wireless to 4G wireless to 5G wireless. Is that it?
Oh,
No, we're going to have six. By the way, you're certain? Yeah. Baby boomers. Are they going to chronologically get younger? No. They're going to age. We're going to have more people retiring. Yeah, we're going to have more people retiring. So I'm going to teach everyone, give you what I call a complex trend right now that you would have trouble with, but I'm going to help you with it. And here is my statement. A lot of people in my company are going to be retiring. Probably I even know when. And they're going to take their knowledge and wisdom with them when they leave. Is that hard or soft? You would struggle with that. Why? Because there was a comma and the word and. The tip I'm giving everybody. Listen to it again. It usually is two trends. Usually the hardest first, the softest later. A lot of people will be retiring in this organization, and they're going to take their knowledge and wisdom with them. The second part is soft, completely soft. You can let them go ahead and do that, but if you know it's a soft trend, hey, the opportunity is to do something about it. I could create a mentoring system. You have a database, you have a knowledge base, you have a wisdom base. I'd rather
Mhm.
have a wisdom base than just a database. So you see what I'm getting at. So
Yeah.
let's take healthcare costs in the United States have been going up and up and up for decades, going up for decades. By the way, that's a trend. Is that hard or soft? Most people would say, oh, that's a hard trend, but they say that because it's been going up for decades. It's actually totally soft. If we think it's hard, we figure out, all right, how do we reduce the cost of all these baby boomers as they age? Is this going to be a hellhole? But if we realize it's a soft trend, we say, well, what kind of breakthrough technologies could we use to lower the cost of healthcare? I'll give you an example. Blockchain. It's secure. It gives you transparency. And if we used a blockchain for healthcare, you would realize the aspirin in the hospital costs $27. You wouldn't put
Yeah.
up with it. You realize that artificial knee can vary in price by over 150%, even if it's made by the same company, the same size, same shape. But when it becomes transparent, what starts happening? Price starts coming down. By the way, there's already a blockchain for healthcare that got 100 million in its first round of funding. I'm just giving you the idea that if you think something's hard and it's actually soft, oh, you're really missing an opportunity. So, what do I love about a soft trend? Let's say right now people are experiencing reduced sales. The industry has been going down right now. There are some industries like that right now. Is that hard or soft? Well, it's totally soft. You can write it down with them, or you can develop some ways of how can I not write it down with them and actually take advantage of it.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
could go on and on, but it's very, very powerful.
Wow. No, it's super interesting.
So
My
what that does, David, real quickly is strategic planning. Most people would in this group, our C-suite and our executives that are watching this, you go to your strategic planning meeting and they probably do scenario planning. By the way, what is scenario planning? Soft trend planning. That's why you have to have a whole bunch of scenarios. You don't know if any of them will happen. And I like that. But where's the hard trends there? Where's your certainty? Where are the things you know for sure?
right.
So transforms how you do strategic planning. And then secondly, transforms how you innovate because you're going to innovate with low risk once you've identified those things. And so again, that becomes very possible. And then the last thing is, do you want a reactionary culture or would you like to have a more anticipatory culture? So you can start looking at how do I empower my people to be more anticipatory? How do I teach them that? Obviously, my anticipatory organization learning system for leaders is being used all over the world and is an award winner. And I've got an anticipatory leader membership one where one person can do it. So I'm doing what I can. That's what my goal for my business is to continue to provide the tools, the mindset, the tools, let's call it the mindset, the tool set, and the strategies for becoming much more anticipatory.
Wow. Um, it excites me for, a few reasons. You know, when I think of disruptive innovations, right? And like we've experienced like a lot of success, particularly in the last year or two. Um, and I remember I was having a conversation a month or two back with a colleague and mentor, Dr. CXO that I admire. And he was like, so David, clearly you guys are doing some good work in the CX arena, but what's next? I'm like, well, there's still like 80% of the addressable market still on prem. He's like, yeah. But like, what are you going to disrupt next? And I didn't have a good answer in that moment. But when I really thought about it, now we're really leaning into radiology AI and predictive analytics and ambient technologies, not just listening, but kind of like all the different use cases, um, what the next gen workforce looks like, and leveraging Apple products in a unified way, as opposed to going back and uh, just doing more network, like going back with our existing client base and be like, hey, let's look at your network, or like let's look at your infrastructure or your disaster recovery, like because
Right.
there was less competition over here, right?
So what I was going to add there is, if I was going to go see a customer or potential customer, what I would do is a hard trend analysis of their business and them before I went in. So, because when you speak what I call in future facts, and you state future facts, they're undeniable truths. I mean, how many of them are there? Thousands of them. I've been working with companies all over the world, and in every audience, at the end of a keynote speech, I actually have the audience. I was just with 1,000 CEOs of tech companies. And I, at the end, after helping them understand hard and soft, I had them all write down one hard trend they know will happen and a related opportunity. And I said, make it a good one, because you're only taking 90 seconds to write one down. But we got 1,000 smart people that are CEOs of tech companies in here. Write them down. I'll collect them. I'll put them into a report and give it back, all back to you in 2 weeks after the meeting. Well,
That's cool.
my biggest audience last year was 20,000. That was just one audience. My biggest virtual audience was 1.1 million. So I've been doing this for a long time. Here's what I would like you all to know. There are thousands of hard trends that you can count on that will happen. And when you learn how to speak in future facts, so let's go back to, I'm going to go see a client. And if I walked in knowing what they do for a living, knowing what they're up to, identifying some certainties, some future facts, some hard trends that I can bring up that relate to what I sell. And I start mentioning, here's some things that we know will happen. And if you don't think so, please speak up and then state them. They
Right,
won't.
like the baby boomers retiring, a lot of them are doctors. So like in healthcare with our customers, a myriad of doctors will retire in the next 5 years, period. Right. That would be an example of a hard
Yeah.
fact. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I was writing about that, what we're experiencing now, in my book, Techno Trends, back in 1993, about how we're going to have, just using my hard trends, we're going to end up with not enough teachers, not enough administrators in the school system. By the way, they're retiring, not enough nurses, they're retiring because
Yep.
of the giant baby boom. When you realize that there's, get this, 10,000 baby boomers a day are turning 70.
Wow.
Let that sink in.
That's crazy.
Well, yeah. What does that mean? Opportunity. If you start looking at what's the hard trend and what's the opportunity. In other words, what are the problems we're going to have that we can predict? And now, if I have something that'll pre solve it, bingo, all of a sudden you've got something.
Wow. I mean, this has been super cool, Daniel. I mean, I love when I host people and the subject matter or the topics that we discuss are so relative to my business too. Like I'm thinking about all sorts of stuff, and I know our listeners will have gotten a ton out of this. So, um,
Well, David, if you want to dig in a little more, at Burrus, BURRUS.com, I've got, literally you could search by subject, thousands of blogs that I've written and a lot of information. In other words, a lot of things you can download. I've got an AI strategy report that is free. If you go to AIstrategyreport.com, I suggest you download it. I've reviewed over 1,200 AI tools and I'm giving you the top 5 in all of these categories and also how businesses are using them. And you're not going to look and use 1,200 AI tools and figure out what's the best one. I did that for you. AIstrategyreport.com. Um, Pick it up, use it. By the way, if you find a tool you like, click on it. It'll take you right to the site. By the way, most of us don't even know the categories of things it can do.
Right.
Wait till you see that. So Burrus.com, you'll find a lot of resources. Obviously, I'd love for people to get into my learning systems and get the book, but there's a lot you can do without spending a dime, because I want as many people to be anticipatory on planet Earth as possible. And if you went back to my 1993 book, Techno Trends, one of the things I had in there was a little statement in a chapter. It was in bold and it said, Blockbuster is busted. And if you read under it, you would see the description of what Netflix is today. And you would see me talking about when smartphones like the iPhone would come out and what it would do. I didn't know what they would call it. You can't predict that. So I called it a telecomputer. But, here we are. Now, instead of me being the only guy that can do it, instead of me being in front of you all saying, I'm great, I can do this. No, I want you to be able to do this. And there's a
Wow. I'm already looking at your, your AI strategy report here. Daniel, this has been great, man. I will be most certainly signing up for your your website, and I love the individual leadership content. I think that'll be super helpful for us. So excited that we had the opportunity to connect. We're almost up on time here. Question I'd just like to ask all my guests as we close out is, if you could go back 5, 10, 15 years in time, which is an interesting question for a futurist, right? What advice would you give your younger self?
um, with whatever I'm doing, because again, I've been doing this for a long time, but it's better to up your own game, to take the bigger, big route.
Hmm.
In other words, to
Yeah,
think, I've been doing big things and I've done some bigger, big things, but it's easy to forget to do that because you can get busy. In other words, you get it, you have the idea, and you just want to dig in. But again, if I go back and say, wait, step back. Is there the bigger big? And again, I found the bigger big is easier than the big. So I do want to give one last little action for everyone before we close out.
please.
That's okay. I would
Absolutely.
like you to spend 1 hour a week unplugging from the present and plugging into your future. That's where you're going to spend the rest of your life. And in that hour, I want you to ask yourself, what do you know instead of what don't you know? What are you certain about instead of what you aren't certain about? What can you do instead of what can't you do? What are those hard trends shaping the future and the opportunity? And then boil it down like a funnel and pick one. Because if you can do one of those, you will do really well.
Wow. Um, I'm excited to get started. Daniel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being with you. Take care.
Yeah, absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We will catch you all next week.